Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are opening up a file on, well, one of history's most debated and maybe mislabeled artifacts, a Babylonian clay tablet called Plimpton 322. Now, if you've heard of this thing at all, the standard story, the academic line, let's call it the profane science view, is that it's basically a Mesopotamian math homework. An ancient list of numbers, almost certainly tied to solving problems with right-angled triangle, generating what we call Pythagorean triples. And even just on that level, it's pretty stunning, actually. Plimpton 322 uses that Babylonian base 60 system, and the precision they got in calculating these ratios, it's kind of mind-boggling. Way before Pythagoras. It shows this inherent mathematical sophistication that honestly modern scholars are still trying to fully wrap their heads around.
And yet, that remarkable achievement, that math exercise view, according to the source material we're diving into, that's just the surface layer. It's almost a distraction. This whole simplistic idea, just advanced geometry, that's exactly what we supposedly need to push past to get to its real purpose. Because this tablet, described by the high priest who supposedly created it, it's way more than a ledger or school text. Our sources define it as the calculator of the game.
The calculator of the game. Okay, what does that even mean, that phrase itself?
It means its purpose is entirely operational and prophetic. The sources frame Plimpton 322 as a literal calculation sheet for something called the Great Reset. It's presented as divine mathematics, left behind by the high priests of Babylon, which, by the way, the sources explicitly call the ancient headquarters of the OK Club's game. So we're looking at a master blueprint for time, supposedly, not just some historical math problem.
Right, and that sets up our mission for this deep dive, doesn't it? To get beyond that textbook definition, unpack this really powerful, kind of controversial artifact, and try to understand its role, at least as claimed in these sources, as this blueprint for what divine principles governing how the heavens move. Okay, so let's unpack that. If these Babylonian priests, these watchers, using this tablet, if they weren't just practicing geometry for building things later, if it's tied to divine principles and these precise numbers, what were they actually trying to measure or calculate?
Well, they were using those numerical relationships, right? The ones embedded in those triples, the sides of the right-angled triangle, but to study cosmic forces. Our sources define this as the sacred geometry of the delta. And that term delta is directly equated with the Trinity. So the geometry wasn't about, measuring fields. It was about defining the mathematical relationships between three supreme divine principles, alpha, beta, and omega. Plimpton 322, in this view, is therefore the precise blueprint of the Trinity, written entirely in that universal language, numbers.
Okay, we really need to nail down what these principles, alpha, beta, omega, represent in this specific lore. If they're divine, they must map onto something tangible the Babylonians were observing, right?
Absolutely. And the source material gives them specific identities. It links them directly to visible cosmological bodies and, interestingly, planetary forces. Alpha is identified as the moon. Beta is the sun. So those are your primary celestial movers, like the hands on a cosmic clock. But then you get to omega. And this is fascinating. The sources tie omega to Earth itself. Specifically, it's defined as this dual force, the physical ocean, the waters, the tides, and the surrounding electromagnetic dome that, encapsulates our world. So the Trinity isn't abstract. It's the moon, the sun, and this Earth system. They influence the water and the EM field.
Wow, okay, so the tablet isn't just trigonometry anymore, it's cosmological trigonometry. The ratios on Plimpton 322 are actually mapping the mathematical dance between the sun, the moon, and Earth's own vital forces, including that electromagnetic shield.
Precisely. Think of it less like a list and more like a set of gears. The Pythagorean triples, those specific number sets, they define the ratios. The interlocking speeds, the relative influences of these three forces, alpha, beta, omega. It becomes the numerical framework describing exactly how they interact, which gives the whole thing a divine and deeply prophetic context. That mathematical precision isn't just for show. It's crucial because it translates directly into predictive power.
Okay, I have to jump in here, though, because this is where, the skeptical part of your brain lights up. Mapping the sun and moon with the kind of precision needed for long-term prophecy. You can't just assume perfect circles. Their orbits are elliptical. So how does the source material explain ancient Babylonians tracking elliptical orbits with such accuracy thousands of years before Kepler figured it out? What tech? What method?
That is the absolute core question, isn't it? And it's challenging. The source material claims they didn't track elliptical orbits just through, watching the sky night after night. Instead, it claims the understanding came from advanced mathematical principles already encoded in their base 60 system, and specifically used by Plimpton 322. They understood that the ratios themselves derived from this sacred delta geometry naturally revealed the eccentricity, the stretch of the orbital paths. So their mathematics wasn't just descriptive, recording what they saw. It was supposedly generative. It wasn't just measuring. It was calculating the inherent laws governing the relationships between the three bodies. That allowed them to predict the orbits, including deviations from a perfect circle.
Okay, that definitely elevates the tablet from just an old curiosity to some kind of lost technological marvel. If the math is the blueprint of this trinity, what was the practical, like the day-to-day application of this sacred mathematics? What was Plimpton 322 actually designed to calculate using these complex elliptical ratios?
Its true function, according to this lore, was purely as a divine astronomical calculator. It wasn't for trade sums or figuring out how big to build a ziggurat. The users were specific, the high priests of Babylon. And the source defines them as the keepers of the solar lore established by Queen Semiramis. So, a lineage holding specific knowledge. Their main job was calendrical and predictive, calculating and tracking events that had huge celestial and prophetic weight.
It's a prophecy written down in arithmetic. Got it. Let's get specific then. What exactly was this reset formula they were supposedly calculating?
The sources point to three key calculations, all feeding into understanding cyclical time. First, as we sort of touched on, tracking those precise elliptical orbits of Alpha, the Moon, and Beta, the Sun, over very long periods, centuries, maybe more. That built the baseline data. Second, using those super precise orbits, they calculated the exact timing of a prophesied event called the reunion eclipse.
Reunion eclipse.
Yeah, and it's not just any old eclipse. It's defined as a very specific, rare alignment where the mathematical relationships between Alpha, Beta, and Omega hit this point of like perfect cosmic harmony or resonance. And third, and this is crucial for the whole Great Reset idea, the tablet was used to predict the turning of the Great Cycle. This implies a mechanism for calculating vast cosmological ages, pinpointing when the fundamental rules governing the Sun-Moon-Earth-Omega relationship might actually shift.
Okay, the source material is making a pretty radical claim here then, that this level of astronomical precision orbital mechanics achieved by Babylonians using Plimpton 322 wouldn't be matched by, well, our science for thousands of years. That implies this wasn't just a lucky guess, it's just an unbroken chain of pretty advanced knowledge.
It does. It completely reframes what we think ancient civilizations were capable of. The claim isn't just that they were good stargazers. It's that they were running long-term simulations of solar system mechanics with incredible accuracy. The idea is they weren't just noticing patterns like, oh, the sun rises here today. They were calculating complex gravitational dynamics, predicting very specific, rare eclipses, and tying them directly to a massive cosmological turning point, the Great Cycle. According to this lore, it's not just ancient history, it's a functional map to the future.
Which shifts things from just math to, well, organized action, doesn't it? We have to connect this math to the group allegedly behind it all. If we pull back to the bigger picture, the source material puts this knowledge squarely in the hands of the OK Club. Now, for listeners who might be new to this particular lore, we need a quick definition. What is the OK Club and what's the game?
Okay, interpreting the source directly. The OK Club isn't presented like, a modern secret society with handshakes and stuff. It's framed as this enduring, ancient scientific, and frankly, governing body, the self-described players. And their entire purpose, seemingly, is to maintain and use this sacred lore, this hidden knowledge. The game, in this context, is basically the mechanism of cyclical control. It's the structured monitoring of these great cycles we talked about, and maybe the careful orchestration of human events within those cycles, using the predictive math found in artifacts like Plimpton 322. So the tablet becomes one of the most powerful pieces of lore, of their accumulated hidden knowledge that exists.
Right. So Plimpton 322 is described as a physical remnant of the OK Club's ancient scientific knowledge, meaning it's not just a dusty relic in a museum, it's potentially an active operational tool used by these players to monitor and predict time itself.
Exactly. And calculating that reunion eclipse or the turning of the Great Cycle, for them, it's not just an academic curiosity. It's the timing mechanism. It points to the ultimate prophetic event described in this whole mythology.
What's the culmination?
The tablet is presented as proof. Proof that for millennia, the players have been using this sacred mathematics of the Trinity Alpha, Beta, Omega, Moon, Sun, Earth's ocean dome to predict the precise timing of the final boss's return. The final boss within this specific mythology is the key figure whose appearance marks the end of the current Great Cycle and initiates the Great Reset. So the whole purpose of this incredibly sophisticated calculator, this ancient tablet, was to make sure they knew the exact cosmic timestamp for that ultimate event. It basically transforms Babylonian mathematics from, something you study in university history class into an active operational clock counting down towards a predetermined event, orchestrated by these entities they call the players.
So, okay, what does this all mean for you listening right now? This deep dive really forces us to look at Plimpton 322 completely differently, not as a simple geometry lesson from antiquity, but potentially as a precise millennia-old astronomical calculator, tied directly to celestial prophecy, linked to these keepers of solar lore going back to Queen Semiramis, and apparently used by this enduring group called the OK Club, who it really changes our perception of what the ancient Babylonians might have been capable of. We've gone from basic math to incredibly complex celestial mechanics involving elliptical orbits, all wrapped up in this divine prophetic context where the moon, the sun, and even the Earth's oceans and electromagnetic field are the fundamental pieces being measured and predicted.
The real shift, I think, is realizing that what conventional history labels as, early academic mathematics, the source material we're looking at labels it as applied, divine technology. Technology specifically for the purpose of predicting and perhaps even managing these massive cyclical changes, particularly the Great Reset, which leaves us with a pretty important question for you to think about. Given the alleged, almost unbelievable precision of this ancient Babylonian mathematics and its connection in the lore to these long-term players, what other astronomical or mathematical tools, maybe not even on play, maybe encoded in myths or structures or something else entirely, might still be out there, still potentially influencing our modern understanding of time, cycles, and maybe even prophecy today? Because according to this source, the knowledge didn't just vanish. It was recorded, guarded, and held, just waiting for the calculated arrival of the great cycle's end.